Okay, welcome everyone. Welcome to this webcast, which is all about presentation skills, but kind of advanced presentation skills. And I've called this magnetic messages, and there's a specific reason for calling it that rather than just presentation skills. So we've got about 45 minutes together, and I want to share with you some principles for improving the quality of your presentations in a work context or a business context. So I definitely don't want to turn you into a professional speaker. I don't think most people here want to do that. I don't think you necessarily have the time to do that. But if you can boost the quality of your presentations in a work context or a business context, it can make a dramatic difference to the impact of your messages, your goals, and even your own credibility. So that's what we're going to talk about today in the next 45 minutes. So there is a handout here. So if you don't need the handout for this webcast, so download it anytime during the next 45 minutes. On the right-hand side of your GoToWebinar control panel, you'll see the place where you can download the handout. So do download that, and it's just a one-page 20-question survey for you to assess where you are at the moment in terms of your presentation skills and the ability to deliver magnetic messages. And as you'll see in the handout, the questions are worded so they're not only relevant to you but to your team members as well, because if you're a leader, if you're managing people, you probably know that you can there's probably one or two people in your team who, if they could just improve their presentation skills a bit, it'll make a big impact to their own personal brand and also to the impact that they have at work. So download the handout, do that at your leisure later. We're going to cover some of the things that are in that survey today. Also, if you complete the exit survey, which you'll get at the end of this webcast, so when the webcast ends, a little exit survey will pop up. It'll just ask for a little bit of feedback. As a thank you for that, I'll send you chapter 2 of my book, The Future of Leadership, which is the presentation skills chapter. And that's a little bit on how to deliver messages in different contexts. So I think you'll find that useful as well. Okay, I will be at the start of May. I'll be running a one-day masterclass in Perth. So if you're in Perth, this might be something you're interested in. It's called More Magnetic Messages. It runs for a whole day, and we're going to cover a number of these skills that I'm going to talk about today. In fact, today is a 45-minute webcast, so we'll only touch the surface of what we're going to cover in that masterclass. I'll tell you a little bit more about that at the end because I want to get into the content today. But just a couple of little bits of feedback from when I've run sessions around this sort of topic before. Somebody, Tony, said, gave me confidence to do more presentations and better presentations. Sonia said, fast, effective techniques. Can't wait to put them into practice. And Leanne, this is, I think, my favorite bit of feedback. My presentations before today, sad face, after today, smiley face. So this is what I want to give you today. And the really key thing from this is that I want to give you ideas that you can use quickly. Easily and quickly, because I know delivering presentations is probably not your day job, but it's something that's important to you to go along with your day job. So my 3 rules of engagement with all my webcasts, I'd like you to do some thinking in the webcast itself. Be a bit playful, and there'll be some opportunities for you to engage and interact and just try out a few things. And also, I hope you're going to get some things that you can take away and put into action for yourself. Many people here on the line do know me, but there are some who don't. So my name's Gihan Pereira. Most of what I do is speaking at conferences. I've spoken to groups all around Australia and New Zealand, elsewhere in the world as well. Large groups, small groups across a number of different industries, some for-profit, some not-for-profit, and so on. And most of what I do, as I said, is these sort of presentations, so large group presentations where there's the audiences come together for an event. I'm there on stage, big screen behind me, and I'm presenting in that context. I know that's not true for most people here. And I don't want to turn you into that kind of presenter, because I don't think that you want to be, and I don't think it's appropriate for most work contexts. For most work contexts, you might be working in a smaller room. So I also run these small group workshops, but even sometimes it's not even that. You might be in a small room with just one table. It might be a boardroom table and a data projector or a smart TV at the front of the room, and you're presenting in that context. But this is the sort of work that I do, and I'm obsessed about presentation presentations and presentation skills. And I need to be, because it's my job. That's what I get paid for, to be a professional speaker and to do it in the best way possible. I also do a lot of work with, and have done a lot of work over the years with webinars and webcasts like we're doing now. So in fact, even Citrix, the company who creates GoToWebinar, and now it's now in Balogmein, they have engaged me to run presentations about how to deliver better online presentations, because they recognize that the quality of online presentations broadly is not very good at all. And so they've engaged me to run these sort of programs, how to build TED-style online presentations, stunning slides. In fact, I'm going to share a couple of the ideas from that presentation that I ran today, using the secrets of great TED presenters in online meetings. Also, I've written a number of things around this area. I've written a whole book around webinars and doing online presentations called Webinar Smarts. There's for the International Institute of Directors and Managers, I wrote this. It's a workbook, what they call a learning module around crafting magnetic messages. So if you're a member of that organization, you can go into the member portal and download this workbook that I created that'll take you step by step through building a presentation, what I call magnetic messages. Also, I didn't write this book, but this is one of the best books about presentation skills by Guy Reynolds, Presentation Zen. And if you are at all interested in improving the visual aspects of your presentations, then you should definitely get Guy Reynolds' book. But the reason I'm mentioning it this year is that I did write a section for it, because Guy wrote to me and he invited me to write the section about how to deliver online presentations and how to create visuals for online presentations. So, I'm there with Seth Godin and Nancy Duarte and some of the other guest contributors to Guy Reynolds' book as well. So, as I said, I'm obsessed about this. I do this all the time. And I know that you shouldn't be obsessed about it, and you're probably not. What you need are things that are not at that level of obsession where you might spend a couple of hours crafting a slide. And there are a couple of slides that I do, there's more than one, where I actually spend around quite a lot of time, a couple of hours on crafting a slide to get it perfect, because I know I'm going to be using that 50 to 100 times. And I know that's not what you want, that's not what you need. You need things that are faster, easier, and safer. So you need to be able to prepare really attractive visuals and good presentations quickly. You need to do them easily, so it doesn't take a lot of technical knowledge. And what I mean by safer is that most presentations that you deliver in a business context, in a work context, when we're delivering in that sort of environment, and I do it as well, it's safer. So in my keynote presentations, there's a lot of humor. I'll do a little magic trick. I'll play the piano on my little iPad mini, and I'll do all these sort of little gimmicky kind of things, which actually not only don't make sense in a work context, but they're not even appropriate in that sort of context. So you still need to be able to make an impact, but you don't have access to, the lighting and the big platform and these gimmicky things that I can do, and in some ways I'm expected to do when I'm presenting in a keynote, doing a keynote presentation for a conference. So we're going to look at things that will still help you boost the quality of your presentations, but do it quickly, easily, and in the appropriate sort of context for work. Because typically what you're doing is you're presenting at some sort of meeting. So I thought it was a fun little exercise to start with, because as I said, this is going to be interactive. Let's figure out the cost, how much time you spend in meetings. So I think we all know that we've been in bad meetings, and sometimes, the meetings where you lose the will to live, and quite often it's because somebody's delivered a bad presentation at the front of the room. Not always the case, and I'm not saying all meetings are bad, they're definitely not. However, let's figure out the cost of meetings. And I've said the cost of bad meetings, but let's figure out the cost of meetings in general. So if you'd like to do this, and I'm going to ask you, so there's a couple of ways you can engage. So there's going to be some polls as we go through, and this one I'm going to ask you to fill in a poll question. And at other times during this webcast, I'm going to ask you to type into the question box. So don't type into the question box for this. Just calculate the number for yourself in your head, and I'm going to ask you to figure out how much time you spend in meetings in a year, and what's that actually costing you in terms of as a percentage of your salary, in terms of actual dollars. So you can do, I'm going to give you a very simple formula here, which you can do in your head, or you can scribble on a bit of paper or use a calculator on your phone if you want to. So here's how you do it. So the cost of your time spent in meetings in a year. So you take your salary in thousands of dollars. So the average, so the median salary in Australia is somewhere around $65,000. But I know that there'll be people here who are on much higher salaries. So if it was a median, you'd say 65 here. Multiply by the average number of hours you spend each week in meetings. So it might be, say, 10 hours. So that would be 650. Add a zero, so 6,500, and then double it, which would be 13,000. Okay, so if we say the median, somebody on a median salary spends 10 hours a week in meetings, then it ends up $13,000 worth of their salary goes to the time that they spend in meetings. Okay, so any questions about that? I'm just going to check if anyone wants to write a question in the question box, because what I'd like you to do is come up with a number. Now, I'm not going to ask you to share the actual number, but what we'll do, just to see what sort of range we get in the room, is I'm going to run a little poll here. And okay, so I'm going to now, I think I've given you enough time to do the calculation for yourself. So your salary, multiply by the number of hours each week, multiply by 20 in effect. Okay, so let me do the poll here. How much are your meetings costing you? Okay, so I'm not going to ask you to give me an exact number, but I've got a range here. Okay, so the poll's on the screen. If you've never done one of these online polls before, pretty simple. Just choose one of the answers. It's completely anonymous because you don't want people to know what your salary is, but also it doesn't really matter because some people spend a lot of time in meetings. Some people don't spend as much. Let's see how we're going. Okay, so 50% have voted. So I usually wait till 80% of people have voted, and then I'll share the results here. Okay, so we're up to about that number. I'm just going to leave it another 3 seconds, and then we'll see the answers. Yeah, okay, so let me share the answers here. I was in two minds about how I do this scale, because I often do this with leaders who are I know the answer is going to be way more than 100,000, and I've scaled it down a little bit because not everyone on this webcast today is in a leadership position, but I know a lot of people are, and you can see here, most people here are still way up the top end of this. So a lot of your salary, a lot of your income is going towards the time you spend in meetings. As you can see here, what are we looking at? 75% of people are in those top two brackets there. So yeah, so that's a lot. So that's a lot that we're spending, a lot of our time that we're spending in meetings. So how much better it would be if those meetings were more effective. Eric Schmidt, the former CEO of Google, a few years ago said this. He said that every 2 days now, we're creating as much information in that 2 days as we did all up until from the dawn of civilization, up until 2003, the start of that information explosion. And this was a couple of years ago, so now we're creating information even faster than that. So the question is not, the problem is not the information that we've got, but it's how we push through the clutter, how we filter, how we manage it, and as presenters, how we make sure that our message gets through among this glut of information. Also, the World Economic Forum, in their Future of Jobs report, which they published last year, and they were looking at they were looking at skills that are going to be essential in the workplace over the next 5 years. So they were looking at, they published this last year, 2018, but they were looking from 2017, 2022, and one of the most important skills is this one here, which is the skill of leadership and social influence. And it's now that I think it's really important that people recognize you as a leader, not because you've got leader on your business card or because you've got a corner office or because that's your job title or your seniority, but it's about how good are you as an influencer. And very much a big part of that is how well you can present in front of a group. Because now to be an influential leader, it's not only enough to be an expert or to have earned that position because of time, but you've got to be a learner, which then gives you expertise, but then you also be recognized as an authority. So somebody who is recognized for their expertise, and that's what authority is. So you're not recognized simply because you have authority because of your job title or your role, but because you are an authority. So that's why this whole idea of presentation skills is more important than ever before. And it's important not just for yourself, but for your team members as well, because you want now the best teams have individuals in those teams who don't just follow orders, but who also take the lead. I heard somebody say that the first and most important job of a leader is not to create followers, but to create more leaders. So if you're a leader, I hope you're that kind of leader and you recognize the value of these presentation skills. Okay, so let's look at some of those skills. So in this one-day masterclass that I'm running in May, we covered these 7 areas. So preparation, how to get your point across or clarify your point so you can get across, the flow of your presentation, some things around design, how to engage your audience without having to resort to gimmicks and trickery, how to present at scale. So sometimes you may need to scale it down, so you need to deliver in 10 minutes. Sometimes you've got an hour. Sometimes you're presenting to 3 people. Sometimes you're presenting to 30 people, and so on. And then your presence. And I'm not talking about your charisma. I'm not talking about gestures and voice and where you stand and all of those sort of things that a number of other people teach when they teach public speaking or presentation skills. I don't think if you want to make a big impact in a work context, I don't think you need that. I reckon if you're really good at these middle areas, so point, flow, design, and engagement, then it'll make a huge difference, because I think most of us are okay standing in front of a room. We know that we're just not that great. And so that's what I want to share with you. If you download the handout, which again I'll mention is on the right-hand side of your GoToWebinar control panel, you'll be able to do like this. This survey is also based around these 7 areas. So you can assess yourself in each of those areas. But what I'm going to do is I'm going to pick 3 of them. So we'll look at flow. I'll show you a couple of interesting things around design, and there's one thing around presence, which is about how to not be tied and not be a slave to your PowerPoint slide deck, because that's one of the things that gets people really nervous. And when they're presenting, they think they have to follow their slide deck. So I want to show you how to look at the flow, and particularly how to get people in the right frame of mind before you start your presentation. I want to talk about how to create better slides quickly, and then also how not to be tied to your slide deck. So we're going to jump around a little bit, but rather than go through all 7 of these at a very superficial level, what I figured I'd do in the next half hour that we've got left is we'll pick 3 of them. So we'll pick the flow, design, and presence, and I'll pick little elements of those and go through them in a little bit of detail, so that you actually get some value from this webcast rather than just getting a superficial overview. Okay, so I've got a couple of other polls coming up. Now, the remaining polls that are coming up are a different style of poll, because the poll is not so much me getting your opinion, but me asking you quiz questions. So in a presentation that I would do in a group, so in a workshop, I'd actually get people at tables and they'd work together and we'd have a quiz and give out a prize. We're not going to do that in this webcast. What we'll do is we will do a couple of quiz questions using the poll software. And then we'll get into some of these practical things. So here's something that the Prezi, which is a presentation software tool, they did a survey, they did some research last year, and this is a question they asked: how many business professionals admit to doing multitasking? And I mean bad multitasking, like negative stuff, like getting distracted on their phones and tablets during meetings. Okay, so the question is, so this one here, sorry, I gave away the answer to this one. So this one is more than 75% of business professionals admitted to doing bad multitasking during meetings. Okay, so most people, when they're in a meeting, there's a reason for them to not pay attention. Okay, my apologies. I shouldn't have jumped straight ahead to that one. That was meant to run as a poll, but that's okay. We've got a few others that will run as a poll without me giving away the answers beforehand. Okay, so let's look at this first area then. Let's jump ahead. So we're looking at flow, and flow is about 3 things. So flow is a path through your presentation, and broadly speaking, it's about 3 things. It's about framing, which is explaining the why. So why should people be paying attention to your message? then message, which is actually the message that you're delivering, and then action, which is actually getting people to take action after they leave, after they walk out of the room, or after you sit down. So this is crucial. Framing, message, action. Every presentation should have all three things. And I want to talk about, let's dig deep into one of them, and we're going to look at this framing one, which is explaining the why. I think this is one of the most neglected things in most presentations, and it's really disrespectful to the audience if you don't do this framing right. And the only thing I would say is that most people don't even realize that they're disrespecting the audience. And so what am I talking about? I'm talking about getting people into the right frame of mind before you get into your message. So a couple of examples so for me as a conference keynote speaker, I'm very lucky. So a couple of examples. About a year ago, I was presenting at a conference for a travel group in Melbourne. This is a beautiful venue in Federation Square. The group was mostly based in Australia, but it was international, so they've flown people in from India and other parts of the world. They had a little video camera off stage here, recording live, and they're doing a live stream to the rest of their team elsewhere around the world while I was presenting. People were in a really positive frame of mind before I started my presentation. Similarly here, a little bit later last year, I was presenting at the beautiful Melbourne Convention Centre. And again, these people had turned up for this was the ARI conference, Australian Human Resource Institute. And I was doing the opening keynote presentation on one evening. And they were here to hear the CEO open the conference, which she did, then to hear me, and then they had welcome drinks. So they were in a really positive frame of mind. Everyone was really excited, looking forward to the 2 full days of content later. But I was lucky. I could start my presentation knowing that people were in a really positive frame of mind. That's not true for most presentations that people deliver in a work context. People come into this meeting, they've been pulled away they've been interrupted from what they were doing with their normal work. They've got an expectation that meetings are boring, and that's experience as well. They've got an expectation as soon as they see the PowerPoint go on that it's going to be a boring presentation full of bullet points and graphs and charts and data. So they're coming in with the wrong frame of mind. And so it's your job, before you get into your message, to do some framing. So if your message is this, so you got this beautiful message prepared, it's all there in a gift wrap box, but it's going to be completely wasted unless you put a frame around it. And the way you put a frame around it is understand that people are asking these 4 questions before they're willing to even entertain the idea of listening to your message. They're asking, why me, why this, why you, and why now? Okay, so let me go through this. So why me is, why is this the right fit for me? Why am I in the right room to be hearing this particular message? Why this? So what are the benefits of this for me? What am I going to get as a result of paying attention and not being distracted on my phone partway through this presentation? So what's in it for me? Why you is, why do you, the person standing at the front of the room, have any right to tell me this? So what's your authority to be able to deliver this message? And then what's the urgency? Why should I bother taking action now? See, I might think I'm in the right room. There's some good benefit. There's some outcomes for me that are worthwhile. And yeah, I believe that you're the right person, but there's so many other things on my plate right now. There's no need for me to take action now. Okay, so every person is asking these 4 questions. It may not be obvious to them, and some of those questions they'll have answered for themselves. But you can't take that chance that they've already answered those questions in their mind. You've got to take the time to actually answer the questions for them. Okay, so let me give you a couple of quick examples here. So in this presentation, in this very webcast, I've been modeling this framing exercise. And let me give you just 2 examples in each of these 4 areas. Okay, there's actually, I've done about 10 or 11 of these framing pieces already. Let me show you 8 of them. So I've just picked 2 in each area. So I've already said that I don't want to turn you into a professional speaker. And if you came in thinking, oh, I hope that he's not going to teach me stuff that is going to take me hours to do, I hope I've already answered that part of the question for you. I've already given you examples of other people who've attended sessions like this, and they've got value from it. So that's the why me. And why this? So what value will you get from this? Well, we've done the little exercise, the cost of your time. So you understand that if you can reduce the it may not be the time that you reduce, but if you increase the value, then you're not going to be wasting so much time. And I've also said it's important now that you're an authority, not just an expert. So that's what you get from being able to deliver magnetic messages. Why me? There's been a few things. I've talked about the books that I've published myself, and also been in Gar Reynolds' book with a whole bunch of other people. And I've also talked about the fact that I do this sort of work as my day job, and a number of big organizations around Australia and New Zealand trust me to present well. And then what's the urgency? We had that Eric Schmidt quotation, and we had the World Economic Forum very current report about why this is really important to us right now. Okay, so I hope you can see there that those 4 questions, those 4 framing questions, are absolutely essential for before we get into the message itself. So we will talk now about some of the things that you do in your presentations, but it's really important to understand that those framing questions are absolutely essential. Okay, let me stop and just check if there's any questions, any comments, any insights that you've got so far from anything I've done so far, but particularly this idea around framing. And you might even like to think about in your presentations, which of these things are you already doing? And sometimes you may be doing them intentionally, sometimes you may be doing them accidentally, but they happen. And more importantly, which are the ones that you're not doing? So, for example, when I run this workshop with people, most people say that they're not very good at doing why now, so they don't give people a reason why they should take action immediately. Okay, question here. How would you do this in a few sentences rather than 10-ish slides? Yeah, so you absolutely can. So when I do my keynote presentations, I do all these things, but I do them very quickly. So there might only be one or two slides that will do all of this. So for example, the why you, it might be that you don't need to spend a lot of time doing that, because in a work context, people already know why you're doing it, because you're the project leader or because you're the external consultant who's been brought in. So you don't need to spend a lot of time establishing your credibility. For me, as a keynote speaker at a conference, the MC does a lot of that job, because they'll read out my introduction. So a lot of that why you is taken care of. Why me? Again, it might be quite obvious why those people are in the room, because they've been brought together for this particular reason. So you may not need to spend as much time on that. So yes, you can absolutely fast track this. And I did spend a bit more time on this than I normally would in most of my webcasts, but I did it for the reason because I want to demonstrate the use of it in real life. Okay, let me just see if there's any others. Okay, good. Let me continue. So let's do some actual design skills. So now let's see if I can get this poll work, if I remember to do the poll correctly this time. Okay, so Dave Parody is a guy in Canada who does a lot of work with PowerPoint and slides and visuals. He did some research, and he's done this research over a number of years. And the most recent version of his research, called this Think Outside the Slide, he asks people in professional contexts, what are the most annoying things that you see people do with their slides? So let's see what you reckon. So which of these was rated the most annoying thing about presentation slides? So let me launch this poll here, and I'll ask you to just pick one of the answers. Of these 4 options here, which did most business professionals say was the most annoying thing about presentation slides that they saw in their work contexts? Okay, most people have responded, and actually most people responded with exactly the answer that Dave got in his, which was that the presenter read the slides. Okay, so that was number 1. Was it the presenter read the slides? And yeah, actually, I'm surprised at how many people got that answer correct, because when I've run this with other groups, it's turned out to be a much more even spread among the 4 areas. But this was the research that he found, that the biggest problem was that presenters read their slides, so they had too much text on the slides, obviously. The presenter read the slides, followed by the text that was on there was just big long sentences. The other one was, the text was too small because they're trying to fit too much text on the slide so they could read it. So these are all related. And the last one is that the visuals were too complex. So when we talk about design, let me show you one really simple tool that design tool that you can do that will make a significant difference to your presentation skills. So in the masterclass, we talk about three things in this segment. We talk about how to avoid boring slides, which is actually what I'm going to show you now. We talk about presenting data clearly. So this is graphs and charts and so on. And then telling memorable stories, not these dramatic stories, but little anecdotes that you can add on to any bit of dry information that you're presenting to add a bit more flavor and a bit more color to it. So we're going to look at this one here, how to avoid boring slides. So I know I have some of my professional speaker friends who are also on this webcast, so welcome to you. So the sort of things I'm going to show here, for professional speakers, you'll think this is nowhere near the standard that I need to be able to present as a professional speaker. And if you think that, you're right, it isn't. But that's not my point here. My point here is to show you a very, very simple technique, and I'm only going to show you one here, but it's very powerful and it's very simple. And it's going to eliminate bullet points. So my goal is to get you walking out of here in about 15 minutes time thinking, I will never have a bullet list anywhere on any of my slides ever again. I'll never show a bullet list. So that's my goal here, because one of the worst things with presentation slides is that they're full of boring bullet lists. And as you saw from Dave Parady's research, presenters read the slides, so they put lots of text, lots of bullet points, because it's a prompt for them. And what I want you to do is eliminate that. So let me show you. So I don't name and shame people here, but I'll show you some examples of some bad examples that I've seen of bullet lists on slides. So these are from real presentations where I've been typically the opening conference keynote speaker, but there may be somebody on before me, and they will have the CEO or somebody welcoming, and they might do a short presentation. And so I'm sitting in the front, and I've taken these photos, and they're blurry, which is a good thing because I don't want to name and shame anybody, so I won't say who it was. But here's an example, a really bad slide here. It's got 10 points, and this speaker then spoke to each one of those 10 with that list on there. So it was really her notes rather than anything useful for the audience. Here's another one where I've grayed out who it was, but this is one, again, way too much detail for a visual. Remember, your slides are meant to be visuals, and in fact, they're meant to be visual aids to you as a presenter, but this is in no way could you consider this a visual. Here's another one. So my partner Nikki and I went on a cruise to New Zealand, and they had this guest speaker who was talking about something which I thought was really interesting. Her topic was neuroscience, but she had this terrible slide. So here's one here. It's a bit blurry and a bit wavy, but that's just because of the screen. But what a terrible slide. And imagine if instead of showing that slide, which is talking about characteristics of neural networks. Now, I don't know anything about neural networks, so I'm not saying anything about the content there. But imagine if instead of that, the slide looked like this. So she had a slide that said neural networks here, with a nice picture in the background, and then it said there are two areas: physical, we'll talk about these three things, and then functional, we'll talk about those four things. Now, I can tell you that the time it takes to create this slide versus the previous slide is probably an extra 3 minutes. Probably an extra 3 minutes, and 2 of those minutes would be finding the nice picture to go in the background. Okay, and I'm going to show you how to do that right now. So if you get nothing else apart from this, just learn this one technique. So let me demonstrate that using, I'll start with something that people are maybe a little bit more familiar with. So we'll do two quick examples here. So let's look at Stephen Covey's, the late Stephen Covey's, The 7 Habits of Highly Effective People. So if a lot of people will be familiar with this, and you may have seen somebody presenting it, and they might present it like this, a slide with a boring bullet list on there. So the only thing they've done is they put it into 2 lists. So they've got, 2 levels of bullets. So the first 3 habits are independent, next 3 interdependent, and then the last one is sharpening the saw. Wouldn't that be much more effective if it looked like this? I'm going to talk about Stephen Covey, blah, blah, blah. The 3 independent habits are this, number 1, number 2, blah, blah, blah. Then this, blah, 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 and then this. Okay, now, again, the difference between the first one and the second one in visual appeal and visual effect is dramatic, and the time it takes is probably about a minute to instead of doing the bullet list like that, to convert it into the much more visual version of that. Let me demonstrate that for you right now. Okay, so what I'm going to do is drop out of my PowerPoint slideshow, and we'll go to this slide. Okay, so let me just show you what that looks like. Okay, so now I'm in my slide development area, and if I pick this one here, so it uses a feature of PowerPoint, which is available on both PC and Mac, and PowerPoint, not Keynote. So Keynote doesn't have this feature. So if you're using Keynote on a Mac, you're out of luck with this one. But PowerPoint on both PC and Mac has this feature called Smart Art, and you'll find it here. It's in the format menu, but the easiest way is here. So you can see here, convert to Smart Art graphic. So you create your slide with the bullet list, and then you choose this option to convert to Smart Art graphic. And there's a number of different things you can convert to. Here's one here. This is the one that I want. So I want to convert it to that. Let me change the colors. It'll pick some colors from the whatever template you're using and whatever color scheme, color palette goes along with that. Okay, I prefer these buttons to be a bit more rounded, a bit more 3D like that. And I don't want the whole graphic to appear in one go. I want them to appear as an animation, appearing one by one. Okay, so you saw me do that. It's pretty quick. If you missed it, watch the recording or rewind the recording and you'll see it. Okay, but what you'll see now is if I go back into the slideshow, now I've got that slide looking much more attractive. And all I did was, probably took me about 30 seconds, even with the explanations in there. Okay, and I'm just click, 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 click. Okay, and there it is. So it's a very simple tool. It's called Smart Art. There are so many other options that you can use with Smart Art. We can do the same thing with this slide here. So this slide here, if I want to convert that into a Smart Art slide, so I've created the bullet list here. Again, let me drop out of PowerPoint for you. Okay, this one I've just chosen a different Smart Art graphic. That's all I've done here. I think I chose, was it this one? So it wasn't this one, so there's more options. And you should experiment with Smart Art because there are lots and lots of different options you could choose from. But let's say it was that one. Okay, it wasn't that one, but it was one of the others. And Smart Art gives you a number of different options. That's the one I chose. I made it a bit smaller so I could move to the right. I won't bother finding the picture because that's pretty easy. It's just a time thing to find a picture that can go in the background. There it is. Go to animation. I'm going to make them appear one by one. Okay, and that's a Smart Art version of what used to be a bullet list. Okay, let me quickly stop and see if there's any questions about that. Well, let me just play that for you. And you can see that working. And let me just check if there's any questions or comments about that. Okay, I hope you can see it's super easy to do that. Okay, there's a question here. Is it available in all versions of PowerPoint? All the more recent versions have it, and on both PC and Mac. So the one that I have is the PowerPoint 365. I have Office 365, so it's certainly available on that. And yeah, both PC and Mac. Okay, good. Let me continue. Oh, okay, this comment here from John. What's John's question? Oh, okay, this one exercise made the presentation brilliant. Good. Yeah, that's right, John. So most, when I do it, people gasp when I do it in a workshop contest. They go, oh my God, I can't believe I never knew that, and it's going to make such a big difference. So I was speaking at a conference last week for a big bank, and one of the people in the bank, who was the state manager who was actually running the conference, he came to my workshop beforehand and demonstrated this to him. And he said to me afterwards, oh, I'll have to upgrade the quality of my presentation for next week at the conference. And to his credit, he did. And he used SmartArt to replace all his bullet lists, with much more attractive visuals. And he said to me after the conference presentation, he said, "I wish I'd had a bit more time, but even the little time that he had made such a big difference to the quality of his slides that he was presenting to the rest of his team at this conference." Okay, let me show you one other thing. So it's one small thing, and it's around scale. And this is the idea of being able to adjust at short notice, because it quite often happens that you're presenting at a meeting and you've either miscalculated how much time you're going to have because there may be more questions, or you just try to pack too much information in there, or it's just that the organizer said, "Oh no, sorry, you haven't got enough time because the person behind you ran overtime. So we now need to bring back time." So how do you, now that you've created all these beautiful SmartArt graphics, how do you move off script and jump ahead so you're not tied to your slide deck? And again, I want to show you just a little PowerPoint feature that's in the more recent versions of PowerPoint. So actually on the Mac, Keynote was the first presentation tool that did this, where if you're looking at your screen as a presenter, you see this. You see this you see these two sections. So you see your slide, the slide that everyone's seeing is on your screen as well, but also on the side you can see the next slide that's coming up. So you know what's coming up next, and if you have any speaker notes, they appear down here as well. But the later versions of PowerPoint have some other really useful features as well. And this is, so for me, I quite often, like I have music in my workshops where I get people working at their table. So I can have Spotify in the background, and I can turn the music on and off directly from here without having to exit PowerPoint, start Spotify. It looks a bit clunky. I don't need to do that. But the other really useful feature, if I can show you this, is while I'm in this slide presenter mode, I can also, oops, it's a bad color for this. Let me just spotlight it. This little feature here shows me all the slides. It goes back into slide sorter view so that I can then look at all my slides. So this is a screenshot of what it looks like. And then I can scroll back and forth here. So if I want to jump over any slides, if I want to skip any slides, it's very easy for me to do that. While people are looking at something else on the screen, I can be scrolling down here and jump ahead from one slide to the next. So I just want to show you that as a useful feature, just to understand that these sort of features are built into PowerPoint. So you don't have to simply create a slide deck and then be stuck with it. I've heard presenters, even professional speakers, say, "I will never use PowerPoint because then I'm tied to my slide presentation." It's just not true. You're not. If you know how to use the tool well, then you can use it as a really powerful visual aid, but also have the complete flexibility to be able to move off script and to be able to adjust to different contexts. Okay, so I've only given you a couple of little ideas here, but I hope I've given you some really practical ideas that you can put into place, especially the SmartArt. If you haven't done SmartArt before, it's a really, really effective tool for you to quickly make your slide deck much more attractive. So as I said, let me go back to that slide here. So broadly, I know I've only covered a couple of things in this little webcast today, but if you want to assess yourself and where you are and your team is with magnetic messages, please download the handout, which is available for you for the next couple of minutes. And also remember to complete the exit survey at the end of this webcast, and I'll send you chapter 2 of the Future of Leadership book, which is the chapter around presentation skills. As I said, if you're in Perth, I'm running this masterclass on the 2nd of May, Thursday, 2nd of May. It'll run for a whole day in this workshop environment. And the idea is that I'll go through ideas like this. In fact, that whole content, the whole content of it is essentially those 7 things that I mentioned, which also map into that survey there. So if you're in Perth and you think it's something that's valuable for you or for members of your team, then please come along or send them along, because my goal here is to give you some really more of these really simple, practical tools. And I hope you've got a couple of them here today. And I didn't just pick and choose the 2 best ones to showcase today. And they're all that level of quality in terms of speed, ease, and appropriateness. As I said, you want stuff that's faster, easier, and safer. And so what I've done is distilled the presentation skills that in work context I think will make the biggest impact. So it's coming up on the 2nd of May. The website, if you want to find out more about it, is moremagneticmessages.com. We price this really well. So speaking to my PA, Emma, and she's run events before, so she'll be there running this event. And we're looking at pricing, and we said, look, let's just keep it at a reasonable price, because typically we looked at other workshops like this and they're up like $2,000, $5,000 for a day workshop. And we're saying it's $1,000 per person. But if you bring more than one person, it comes down to $750 per person. So you can register. We've already started getting registrations in, but we're not full yet. So if you're interested in it, go to moremagneticmessages.com and register now. It's coming up pretty soon. So I would suggest, if you're interested at all, set aside the time now, mark the date in your diary and register for it. So I hope I've given you some really practical ideas that you can put into action. My goal from today's webcast is partly to tell you about the masterclass that is coming up, but more than that, to give you some really practical things that you can put into place and that you can use straight away. So as I said earlier on, just only partly tongue-in-cheek, I hope you can you can walk away from today thinking, I will never, never, never use a bullet list anywhere in a presentation ever again. When I said that, you might have thought I was joking, but I hope you can see now that you'd never need to do that. So that's just one idea, and if that's all you get from today, I hope it makes a big difference to your presentations. If you've got any questions, please get in touch. I will send you the recording of today's webcast, and you can just reply to that with any questions or comments that you've got as well. Let me just see if I see some ideas or questions or comments. Oh, yeah, thanks. John says, thanks. Very good webinar. Lots of great tools. So thank you. And I see a few other thank yous coming in. So it's my turn to also say thank you. So thank you for coming along. Thank you for participating, for playing along with the polls and the activities. And I hope you got some value that you can use to create more magnetic messages. Thanks, everyone, and bye for now.